Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, high flyers. It's time to come back down to earth, albeit just for a moment. Sure, keep your head in the clouds if you want to, but bring your feet to the ground just for a little bit at least. It's time for Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And in today's episode, we're laying out a clear path for your future, at least in part. Today, we've got a story about a new way to diagnose disease that is sure to get tongues wagging. Now, for those of you who are constantly on the go, we have a little something for your smartphone that'll speed things up and perhaps make life a little easier for you on the way as well. And at last, we're turning the tables on scammers, and maybe we might just have the upper hand for once and for all. But first, welcome to the microphone, the man with the substance behind the headlines. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson.
Substance behind the headlines, but also the sore legs at the moment.
Sore legs.
Just run a half marathon today before we came along here, which
just
is
a lazy half marathon.
That's right, which is good fun. But what I do want to talk about is the technology, and most people are familiar now when you go to.
Oh, so it was a race. It wasn't just.
I didn't just go for a random run,
half marathon.
No.
Yeah,
I try and avoid
competitive race, yeah, of course.
Competitive in a very loose sense of the word.
Yeah.
But most people are familiar now with the timing chips that are installed in the bibs, which I think is wonderful technology. Many, many years ago, before we had that technology, I actually wrote a program for a running event where you had barcodes on the bibs, and then we had people there with barcode scanners, literally barcode scanners from...
Trying to leap out in front of them to scan the barcode.
As they ran across the line, that's right. So that worked well for a basic little fun run event, but we've moved way past that now. But what I do like is the way people think to use technology. So we have a barcode, or not a barcode, but a chip scanner and a chip in our bibs. So you run across the start line, you run across the finish line, that gets your time really accurately.
And Bill Gates can know exactly what you've been up to.
Well, I assume that's what he's doing. He's got nothing else better to do than look what time Matthew did in the half marathon today. But you think, okay, well, that's good. You get an accurate time. So that's fantastic. Happy days, leave it at that. But no. People are creative. People do other things sometimes. So what you see often in different races, and you see this in the City to Surf, for example, they'll put some of those timing chips around different parts of the course so you can have little split time. So in the City to Surf, you've got Heartbreak Hill. So people will race Heartbreak Hill. Let's do the best time we can on Heartbreak Hill. So you'll get some little split times through the race. But one I liked today in particular was they put a timing chip about say 200 metres or so before the finish line. And I remember I was running along there, getting pretty close to the finish line, thinking I'm trying to get there, I can hardly wait to get there. And I see a timing pad and I go, well, I know that's not the finish line, but why is there a timing pad there? But then I realised as I came across the timing pad, there's an MC who's making announcements. So a couple of 100 metres before you get to the finish line, they go, well, here comes Matthew Dickerson along. And I'm going, wow, he's good eyesight. And then I realised that as you run across the timing chip, 200 metres before the end, up on their screen for the MC comes this person. It might be what age category they're in. It might be a bit of basic information about them.
Right. You want that MC talking about you like you're an old friend.
That's right. And that's exactly what this MC did. So I just thought, that's clever. That's creative. It's using the technology that's there already. I'm sure it wasn't much extra trouble to put in an extra timing chip because they've got them around the course anyway. So let's do that and make it a really personal experience, just like you're at the Olympics when they know the name of everyone coming across the line. And the bibs, of course, have got your names on them, but you'd have to have the binoculars out, whereas it just pops up on your screen. So I just thought that's where we still need humans, not AI. AI wouldn't have come up with that, would it?
No, that would not.
We still need humans to come up with little creative ideas just to add to the experience of the event. So I love that. I'm sure other events do it as well, but the event I did today, I thought that was quite clever.
A lot of fun. All right, okay, banter aside, it's time to get busy. Now, fans of Wallace and Gromit are going to get a real buzz out of this story. If you love where robotics is going and you love pants, then perhaps you'll be very keen to get yourself into a pair of robotic trousers, folks, designed to enhance the walking experience. Sound familiar? I can hear the theme music playing in the back of my head right now. For that special someone who already has everything, we offer you robotic trousers. What could possibly go wrong, Matt?
Well, I could have used them today, actually. That might have been quite handy when you're out there running a half marathon. I actually had these images of Edge of Tomorrow. Do you remember that movie? Tom Cruise was in it, and the day repeated each day. They were fighting aliens, and each day it was a bit like Groundhog Day. You just had the day repeating. But they had these huge, big exoskeletons on. So they were humans, but they had all these extra powers because they had these exoskeletons. That's taking it to the extreme. But in this case, it just looks like, and I had a look at a few different images, looks like a normal pair of trousers, but just down the outside, it had an extra bit of ribbing, which was basically carbon fibre, and a bit of a knob where the knee is, and that's where there was a little motor. So essentially, you put these on, you'll just get a bit of an extra boost. And I thought of an e-bike where you've still got a pedal, but when you're pedaling, you go, whew, I'm feeling pretty good today. I'm pedaling away, and gee, I'm going faster than I normally would. And that's exactly the concept with these pants is you walk and you're just getting a bit of extra boost.
So,
now,
energy assisted, yeah?
Energy assisted, that's right. Now, I started thinking, apart from just going around and walking around the shops and doing a bit, what do you want to put these on for, apart from cheating in a half marathon? What do you want to put them on for? And then it came to me when I was reading a few stories about it, was that one of the things that people really struggle with as they get a bit older, or if they've got some issues with their legs, is stairs. Stairs are really tough for people that start to lose a bit of mobility.
When your knees are starting to fade a bit.
When your knees starting to fade, when your muscle tone may be starting to fade, when you do have some problems walking. So what I found when I read some articles was that people that are losing a bit of mobility, walking around on flat ground, no problem. Bit of a slope, yeah, sure, that's a bit tough. Get to some stairs. And when you think about it, you put one foot on a stair and you lift, you're flexing that quadricep presumably, and that's lifting your entire body weight. So you're sitting there lifting up 70 kilos with one leg. So it's a little mini leg squat, if you like, with 70 kilos on the end of it. You don't think about that much when you're in your 20s, but maybe when you get a bit later on in life, that becomes a bit of an issue. So apparently people avoid stairs, people that are getting a bit older, avoid stairs like the plague because it's really tough for them. Put a pair of these pants on, though. Happy days.
Yeah, wow. I wonder if they're any good for jewellery heists as well. Just beware of suspicious-looking chickens, I guess. Do you know what I'm talking about with Wallace and Gromit?
No idea.
You've got homework tonight. Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers, it's called.
Right.
There's a jewellery heist and a suspicious chicken in it. Okay, but yeah, so energy efficient, getting up and down stairs for those people with dodgy knees. There's a lot of good in there.
Yeah, and you also get things about hiking, mountain climbing, just walking to work maybe. So anything where you might use your legs a bit more, fantastic. And one of the things that I like about e-bikes is that you can get people of different levels riding together. So if you've got someone who's a really good bike rider and someone who's not so good, let's go for a ride together. And the person who's good goes, I'm not going to do much. I'm going to have my heart rate sitting on 80 the whole ride. And the person who's not so good goes, it's going to be so much hard work keeping up with you. An e-bike lets you go for a ride with people that have got different abilities. And I think the same with this. If you want to go for a bit of a hike or a bit of a walk, a mountain, maybe not mountain climbing, but mountain walking, then they sound like a good solution for all those things as well. So that's all the good news. The bad news, I've got two bits of bad news. I do apologise for this. There's first bit of bad news.
Side of the coin,
there is. Yeah. This one is the price. $4,500 US.
Right.
So you really want to be committed to that mountain walk with a friend.
And that's right. And they want to look good on you too.
That's right.
And so if you're worried about your bum looking big in it,
probably don't get them. The second minor problem is you can't get them yet. But as we often say on this podcast, we're talking about tomorrow. We're not talking about today. The $4,500 I mentioned is the early bird discount. So if you pay for them now or put a deposit on now, that's exactly right, then you'll get them at the early bird discount. Not sure what the final price will be. But I imagine, I think this will happen. I think this is one of those things that we talk about that I go, yeah, I can see this definitely happening. The technology's there. The market's probably there, so sure thing.
I've seen something of a similar sort of ilk as a remedy for paraplegia. Like strapping or putting these support legs onto people and enabling them to walk where they lost the power to walk.
And I think that's probably the potential you could have. You could have different levels for them. If you've got no use of your legs at all, then something like this. And they might be a bit bigger and sturdier because they've got to support your entire weight. Yeah. Whereas these, your legs are still doing their job. They're just getting a bit of help along the way. So I don't mind the idea, but probably it'll be sometime around the end of next year, the end of 2025, before they'll finally be available. So pay your $4,500 now. Actually, I think you don't have to pay a deposit now, but get ready to pay your $4,500.
That's right.
And sometime next year.
Christmas 2025, here we come.
That's right. That's an early Christmas present.
remember stick out your tongue and say ah? It was the standard practice for a visit to the GP back in the 70s, but it seems to have disappeared these days, and I cannot remember the last time a doctor asked me to stick my tongue out. Well, that doctor's test may be set for a comeback, folks. It appears that any number of medical maladies have markers that are laced throughout our taste buds. There's me affecting a lisp now. Matt, is this some 21st century quackery or is it legit?
It's legit, and I think of exactly the same thing. When you think about your tongue and doctors, you go, yep, stick it out.
Used to be standard.
I know.
First thing.
I tried to find a fancy name for the little device that the doctor used, and tongue depressor.
That's it.
That was the best I could get. I thought there'd be some fancy name that had 28 syllables, but no, that was it. So
sphygmomanometer or something like that.
Exactly.
But you would also get that treatment when you had the doctor's visit as well. They do your your blood pressure, I should say. Yeah,
that's right. So you're right. You'd stick your tongue out, and maybe when we were kids, every time we went to the doctor, it was because you had a cold, so they wanted to look down your throat. So maybe that's why they did it. But it does seem like something. I'm the same as you. I can't remember the last time a doctor said, stick your tongue out. Let me stick a tongue depressor on there.
Just making a comeback.
Boy, it may well do. So this concept here is drawing on traditional Chinese medicine. And you think, sure, people talk about stuff from thousands of years ago, but we've moved on in the world. But apparently with Chinese medicine, they used to do tongue analysis thousands of years ago. Not sure how accurate it was, not sure how good it was, but there used to be some sort of analysis. Modern researchers from the University of South Australia and Iraq's Middle Technical University have teamed up. And the first thing they did was they took 5,260 photographs of tongues.
That's a reasonable sample set.
Sounds like a fun job, doesn't it? What did you do today? I took a photo of so many tongues. So that's the first thing they did. But of course, then each photo they took of the tongue, they categorised any ailments that person might have. And so you think, well, what could you tell from a tongue? What information do you get? Well, apparently, by photographing and analysing the shape, colour, thickness, then you can diagnose or predict, if you like, things like cancer, diabetes, asthma, gastrointestinal disorders, so a whole range of things. So, for example, diabetes has often got a yellowish type tongue. Cancer might have a purple tongue, might have a thick coating on the tongue. So an unusually shaped red tongue could be someone that's had a stroke. So there's a whole these different things that our tongues are marker for. Now, a doctor, an experienced doctor, a doctor that's really good might see your tongue with the tongue depressor and go, ooh, I remember seeing something like this maybe in 2 years ago, 5 years ago. I'd just better see if there's something there. The problem we have is that humans don't have perfect memory, don't have perfect recall. So this concept about Chinese medicine from a couple of thousand years ago is okay, but throw a bit of AI into the mix here and you get a database, well, to begin with, 5,260 images of tongues, and then each new image that's seen, oh, I know what that looks like because that is similar to sample 3,280 and sample 2,150. This person probably has diabetes. So that's the way they've used it.
Yeah, wow.
After they've taken all those images, they then went into some Iraqi hospitals and basically took photographs of people's tongues without any knowledge of what was wrong with the person and then got AI to predict. The accuracy level was 96.6%.
Oh, that's good.
Now, 5,260, very strange number, but 5,260 seems like a large number, but really not that big a number in the scheme of things. So the next part, I think, with this is just to keep feeding that data in. So let's predict what this person has based on this tongue image. Okay, now we know the answer. Let's feed that information in and let's build that database up. Where they think they'll be able to use this is when you've got people in countries that have got maybe not great access to doctors, and this will be a way to do an initial diagnosis to say, let's have a look at your tongue. Let's see if we can get some indications about what might be wrong from that before we start going down the next steps. So again, using it in that sort of scenario, you can get health facilities or health diagnoses to people in places that maybe don't have good access to medical facilities. So it doesn't sound too bad.
So clever, so very clever.
So very clever. And then that potentially could get better as we keep getting more and more. I do love the fact that we've got a university in Australia here in South Australia that's a part of this program, but you can only imagine it's going to get bigger and bigger as this builds up.
Exactly.
I imagine that you'll slowly get this database that will just keep increasing. If there's some way of sharing that information, then that will just increase the accuracy quite incredibly.
onset of AI has been transformative for the way that tech-savvy people work, but it may appear that the future of its success hinges on a transformer. Now, fans of popular culture may get excited about Autobots assembling, but that's the wrong sort of transformer, of course. Likewise, physics students and electricians who think they know transformers may also like to take a bit of a step back. This transformer is a new thing. It's a neural network, and it has the capacity to increase the power of AI thinking enormously. Is that right, Matt?
There's a whole range of interesting parts around that. Let's start first of all with ChatGPT. The GPT in that stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So you're right. You're not thinking about a Sparky's transformer, not thinking about taking some AC to DC or changing the voltage levels. You're talking about transforming. That whole model relies on that. Now, part of the concept here is that you've got this thing called scaling laws. It kind of makes sense. You feed a model, an AI model, more data and more computing power, and it leads to better performance. So that kind of makes sense. Sure, give me more information and give me some more processing power to crunch all that. I'll get better answers for you. So that sounds great. So you continue to scale that. Now, ChatGPT is coming out shortly with GPT version 5. And they believe in that because you've got this scaling concept, you'll get human-level reasoning that's the equivalent of, say, for example, a PhD student.
Wow.
So that's pretty advanced reasoning out of a model. But there's some other sides to this. For example, you talk about the whole concept of scaling, feeding more data. Well, it's probably got, the model already's probably got most of the available data already. So it consumes or ingests the internet. Now, it's not quite like that, but essentially a lot of data out there that's already been consumed. So how much further can you scale that? How much further can you scale that in computing power? And then part of the problem is you start to get to the point where you generate some of the data synthetically to be able to feed more data. But we've talked before about the idea of feeding AI data to AI and let it learn from that, and you end up with complete and utter rubbish. A bit like the photocopying example I think we used before. You keep photocopying a photocopy, and then you get to the stage where you can't recognise what it is. So it's getting to that point now where it's close to saying, are we at the limit of how much data you can get? Are we at the limit of our computing power? Probably not. But what extra data are you going to have? Now, the other part is transformers lack internal memory. And once again, we're clever. Humans have got internal memory. We can remember stuff. And then when we're asked a question or thinking about a solution or just having a conversation, we're using all that memory of stuff to then come up with our answer. But essentially, when you look at something like a transformer, it basically has to go back and look at previous data, which is inefficient computationally, but it's so quick with its computations. It can look at that previous data and then come up with a response that sounds and feels like a conversation. So they're talking about different models. So the transformer model, is that the right model? Or do we need a model that's actually got memory built into it so it can remember things and have access to those in a quicker way?
Wow.
We think AI is just this complicated thing that we don't understand, but it's more than that. It's so much more than that.
So much to it.
So it is interesting to see where we'll go with it.
So there's no way we can understand the things we don't understand.
That's a bit of it, isn't it? So maybe we could ask AI to help us understand. Yeah. But this is where we're headed in the whole AI world. There is so much happening, but you do start to reach some of these limits. And I think one of those limits definitely is just how much data it can ingest and how much new data it's got access to. How can it get better with only so much data to ingest and start that process?
Well, one thing that I had sort of assumed and had just taken for granted was that AI was good at finding, say, fact. Let's call it fact, but that's a rubbery sort of a term, given that it's scanning the whole internet, right? But it would find details and then it would spit that back out. It wasn't good at potentially making judgments or a deeper analysis of that. But you're telling me that's on its way.
That sort of reasoning, with ChatGPT 5 is definitely on its way. And even now, I've played with it. I've given a social media post to ChatGPT and said, here are a couple of options I've got for a post. Tell me which one's best. And I'm just playing with it to a certain extent to see what it comes up with and why. And so you read it, you go, well, I can understand why, but it is a bit like someone said to me once, every accountant's got two hands, because you go and ask an accountant, should I do something? They go, well, on one hand, you could do this. On the other hand, you could do that. And I think ChatGPT or AI in general, when you ask a question where you're asking for a decision, it typically gives you both sides because it doesn't want to be the one making a decision for you. But yeah, it's a complicated area. And I suppose one of the things that you've got some comfort in or be scared about is there's a lot of clever people working on the whole AI model and hopefully getting it better all the time.
Do you find yourself constantly on the go, constantly needing things to happen faster? Well, there's a new phone charger out there that will blow your mind, folks. This gadget won't be the thing that holds your day up. It'll take your smartphone from 0 to 100 before the end of this story. Matt, turn the dial up to 11. Fast charging has been given a dose of red hot chili peppers.
Red hot, absolutely right. Now, you might remember that Xiaomi had the previous record. They had a 300-watt charger.
Didn't remember this?
No, well, Xiaomi, Xiaomi, the Chinese company Xiaomi, I'm sure that's how you pronounce it.
That'll do me.
Doesn't roll off the tongue nicely, but they had the previous record at 4 minutes and 55 seconds to fully charge a battery.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, I have a slight concern when I quote these times because you could cheat. You could just have a very small battery and say, look at this, my battery charges really quickly. And then a larger battery, a bit like cars, electric vehicles, where they talk about how long to charge.
So we need an international standard battery size. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, surely. We've got the King of the Bible for the length of text, so surely we need an international standard battery size. But they had the record, and the 300-watt charger was an important part of that. So now we've got a company, Realme, that's developed a 320-watt ultra-fast charger, and that can fully charge a smartphone in 4 minutes and 30 seconds, which is obviously better than 4 minutes and 55 seconds. The 320-watt is significant there, obviously, but you think, well, that's easy. Let's come up with a 340-watt. That'll show them. It's a bit like one of my marketing ideas. Yeah. You've got 2-minute noodles, and I'm thinking, maybe I could introduce 1 minute 55 noodles. That'll win the competition. So it's all well and good to say we've got a 320-watt charger, but the trick here is the battery chemistry to be able to take the charge. So we could just create a bigger charger.
Yeah, that's right.
A standard PowerPoint, 10-amp PowerPoint's got 2,400 watts. So let's crank it up to that. But it won't do any good just trying to put all that charge into a battery. So the real development here, I know they often talk about the size of the charger, but the real development is the battery technology, the battery chemistry. And so when you start to think about that, you go, do I really need to charge from dead flat to fully charge in 4.5 minutes? Or they also quote a 1 minute charge. How much can you get in a 1 minute charge where you'll get 0 to 26% in 1 minute? So if you I've just got to put a bit of charge in my phone, I'll just plug it in for a quick minute, bang, 26%. You go, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. Yeah, so the whole thing about convenience, but the reality is, when do you charge your phone? You probably stick it on the charger overnight. And the next day it's fully charged and you get through the day and the next night you charge it. So
the amount of times where you've needed it to be charged up in a hurry from 0 to 100, it's not
that often, unless maybe you're a teenager. Maybe then you're working it so hard you need to recharge it. But I think the big thing here is not so much how fast you can charge your phone. It's more about developing that chemistry so that when you want to charge your EV, because that's where the real progress and I suppose the real demand is, I want to be able to charge my car fast so I don't sit there and wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes for a charge of a car. I can wait 5 minutes for a charge of a car, getting it down similar to maybe filling up with petrol. So it's nice to develop this for phones, but I think we're really going to see it in some other areas there. So good changes so far. And I think one of the things we've seen in the past is when you do that fast charging, often the battery will wear out quicker, but certainly the advancements in battery technology are getting to the point where you can charge them quickly without degrading your battery in a faster way.
Politics is a dirty game, and some candidates will go to any measure to shape the thinking of voters. It's always been a challenge for Joe Public to sift through the lies and to find the reality during campaign season. But I guess you could always at least trust your eyes and ears previously. Now AI has thrown a major spanner in the works. Max, you're not Max.
Maybe I am, maybe.
Well, has it been a lie all along? Politicians telling lies on the soapbox is not a new thing. But has the Trump campaign taken the mind games to a new level is the question.
Oh, it has, and I just don't know what we're going to do about it. So having someone like Taylor Swift, we spoke about Taylor last week in terms of vinyl records, she is a phenomenon on her own.
She's just such an enormous influence as
Absolutely
a result.
right. So if someone said, you've got Taylor Swift behind you, no matter what it was you're doing,
Bingo.
you'd say, fantastic, that's it, I might as well finish the process of whatever I'm doing now, be it an election, for example, and say, that's it, I've won because I've got Taylor Swift behind me. Taylor Swift is not behind Donald Trump, but there are videos out there that are showing Taylor Swift behind Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So it gets worse than that, though. It's not just Taylor saying vote for Donald. It's not just Taylor with the good old American Army posters saying Taylor wants you to vote for Donald Trump, but there's also videos, and I say that in inverted commas, of young women wearing Swifties for Trump t-shirts. Now, if you think Taylor's a whole phenomenon on her own, then the Swifties are that times 10, times 100.
It's the army, isn't it?
It's the army, that's right, behind Taylor Swift. So if the Swifties are in favour, well, absolutely, just the Swifties vote alone would probably get you across the line.
Yeah.
But no, they are not supporting Donald Trump, but there are videos, there are photographs, there's all of these things out there. There's non-profit True Media, which is a company that tries to detect AI, and they said, we found substantial evidence of manipulation in these images and videos. So it's not as if, I think there might be something there. It's pretty obvious that they're there.
And once they're out, it's very difficult to erase the impact that they have.
That is the problem. So Taylor Swift's come out and said, no, I don't support
she
Donald
has
Trump.
come out and
She's
said that?
come out and said that.
Yeah, right.
But how many people see that versus how many people saw the first one? There have been various Swifties groups coming out saying, we have no group that we know of that's supporting Donald Trump. And just to make it a bit more confusing, there is actually a group that supports Harris. So you've actually got a Swifties group. They've created this whole group that is supporting Kamala Harris for presidency. So yes, that's true. So Donald Trump said, well, I'll get in on the action as well. I'll just create my own fake group and then everything will be okay. So where do you stop?
The smoke and mirrors. That's
Right. So Trump's playing all sorts of silly games with this. He posted an AI-generated image of the Democratic National Convention with Harris draped with a Soviet Union flag. So just so many things there. You've got to look at it. We've talked before about how you might detect various images that are being manipulated, various videos that are being manipulated.
Well, I guess the first clue is, does this look absolutely bizarre? Does this look like something I would not have expected to see?
That's right. But for some people too,
that's
they
when you
see
start
something and they go, yep, that aligns with my beliefs. It must be true.
That's it.
And they don't want to fact check it.
That's
but
right.
it's I suppose the warning here is just check everything thrice. It just seems like, what do we believe in?
Have you seen the video of Trump and Harris walking hand in hand in the beach and then going on and, basically going through all the couple stuff, living life together.
Right. I haven't seen that one.
Schmoozing and all that sort of stuff.
I did see the Musk and Trump videos of them dancing together, of Musk and Trump dancing. And again, apart from the fact that they both looked a bit skinnier than they really are, it looked pretty good in terms of, if you just glanced at it, you just saw it in a feed on a small smartphone screen, you'd go, yep, that's Trump and Musk dancing for whatever reason you want to see those two dancing together.
AI is responsible for psychological sabotage. It's a big, beautiful universe out there with stuff happening all the time. With so much of the universe to scan, it's really hard for a few people to take on the job who are actually purposefully trying to find the cool stuff out there. So that's where you enlist the general public, Matt, for the eyes on the skies.
I do like this citizen science concept, getting people involved in science that are just general Joe Blow citizens.
And all you need is an app that can feed data to a database.
Exactly right. And we saw this happen with the solar eclipse in the US, where they wanted people to take photos, and obviously the phone would record their exact location and then feed that into an app, as you say, and then scientists can look at that and just get some ideas of some different bits of data, because they couldn't possibly go and install the thousands of cameras that all these people out there with phones had. So I like that concept. That was about a very specific event. Now we've got Black Hole Finder. So that's the actual name of the program. Go and search it if you like. Go and use that. And what's happening with this, it's developed by the Dutch Black Hole Consortium, and they're trying to get people to help locate kilonovas. Now, I hadn't heard of a kilonova, heard of a supernova, but a kilonova is not as big as a supernova, which kind of makes sense. It's about 1,000 times brighter than a nova. So when you've got kilonova, that makes sense. So 1,000 times brighter, but probably only maybe a tenth or maybe even a hundredth the brightness of a supernova. Now, the problem you've got is that you don't get the kilonovas showing up for very long. So their brightness and they've got a brief lifespan makes it hard to detect them. So when you've got scientists who are using the telescopes, using the equipment to look for these, you've only got so much sky you can look at. You've only got so many of scientists out there that are doing this work, so they can easily miss some of these.
And the other thing is just a fraction of a degree, just moving the telescope by a fraction of a degree opens up an entirely enormous section of the universe.
Correct. And there's all that universe to try and then look at, and you're trying to analyse all that to try and pick up where it is.
Yeah.
So if you download the app, you can start looking at some of the information that's there. And you can look at these, they're probably 5 to 10 pixels in diameter is what you're looking for. So you can imagine they're small. You're looking there, you can then classify potential kilonovas as what you think is being real or bogus or unknown. So you look at something, you compare it to what it should look like, and you go, no, that's not a kilonova, no, bogus, or not sure about that one. So that might make a scientist go and look at it a bit more, or real, hey, that's definitely it. With all of these people out there using that, then the scientists can basically focus where they need to look a bit further to try and identify some of these. Now, what do you get out of all this? Well, you get a pat on the back. You get nothing in particular, except if you get to the stage where you look at more than 1,000 image sets, so you've been pretty keen on this, you get to be called a super user.
Hey.
But you still get paid nothing.
A T-shirt?
Not a T-shirt even.
Coffee
you
mug?
just get to say to your mates, you know what? I am a super user. And they go, great, does that mean you buy us a coffee or what happened? So essentially the idea here is just help science in general. I suppose that's what you can do. You can say that I helped humanity's understanding of astrophysics.
And for the sort of people who are going to pick this up, I think that is probably enough. I think that's...
You're probably right.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be justifiable to pay people to do it. It wouldn't be justifiable to pay people to find them. But you've got people out there who like doing this.
Just want to contribute.
You've got hobbies. People go and watch the doggies for hobby, or they go and watch a game of footy. Why not go and look for kilonovas as a hobby? It sounds pretty reasonable to me.
And you'll probably find out who else is finding kilonovas and whereabouts they're finding kilonovas.
And you could also go and get together as a group then and do a kilonova watching group. All sorts of fun things. But I do like citizen science. It sounds
absolutely. And with the focus still up in the heavens, our next story is all about Australia's contribution to the next round of lunar missions. Now, exploration of the moon is an adventure that captured the collective imagination from the 50s through the Apollo missions of the 60s and 70s, and then, well, it became prohibitively expensive for about 4 decades. And really, they didn't have any real goals for about 40 years. But it's well and truly on the radar once again for a resurgence in the second quarter of the 21st century. Matt, Australia wants in now. So what is our entry into the next chapter of lunar missions going to look like?
Well, we've got Rover and we've got Skippy. So
of course we do.
We've got a couple of potential lunar rovers that will be used on the moon mission. So this is NASA's obviously moon to Mars initiative. So they say maybe by the end of this decade, NASA will be back up on the moon. And there's been other things we've talked about in relation to this, but they need some rovers. So they need some type of lunar rover to go and basically do a few things. They want to go and take some samples, look for soil, ice, other samples from the moon's south pole. It'll spend about 14 days on the moon doing stuff. And then after that, it'll be left there. So this will be Australia's contribution to the moon. Will be a rover there. Now, there's a bit of competition. You've got AROSE and you've got ELO2, are two companies that have basically received some money to continue to develop their rover designs. I'm talking about $4 million they've received to continue to develop their designs.
Yeah.
Ultimately, only one rover will be chosen. Will it be chosen on Rover versus Skippy? Maybe it'll be chosen on a few more details on that. But these rovers are about the size of a suitcase, got a bunch of solar panels. They'll land on the moon. They'll be deployed. The solar panels will open up. They'll start collecting some sunlight. Obviously, they'll have batteries on board. And then they'll go around exploring that for the next 14 days. Probably about 1 metre per second they travel along it, so not very fast, but they're not designed for speed. They're designed to get some samples and basically take that information. So
awesome. It
is quite awesome, and it's good that we're a part of it in some small way. I feel that's nice. We're not launching the rocket that's going to be going to the moon, but we'll have some Australian payload on there. But the real competition now is between these two prototypes to see which one's going to be chosen. I think that'll be the real development there. And you'd be a bit frustrated, wouldn't you, if you've done a bunch of development work and your model wasn't quite chosen to go? You'd say, well,
Not this time.
Well, maybe not this time.
Perhaps
Maybe
next time. But,
maybe they could learn, or maybe after they choose one, they could say, now we've chosen that, let's collaborate and let's put all that information together, because presumably you've both learned things independently of the other one, so you might be able to contribute there. But I think it'll be quite nice to see some type of Australian technology on the moon.
Certainly exciting. And, watch this space, folks.
Definitely.
In the war on scamming, it feels like we've been constantly on the defensive. A game of chess where you hope that you and your loved ones are brushed up on the latest rules and tactics, where every move seems to be reactionary. Well, the tables may be turned to give the good guys the upper hand. AI is being enlisted to turn the tables and get the scammers on the back foot. Matt, is that the sound of the cavalry riding up the hill or what?
It's the sound of AI combating AI, I think. It seems to me like there's going to be an arms race here where
AI duels.
That's right, where AI will say, right, we've got this under control, and then the scammers will use AI to try and beat that. But I do love the fact that at the moment we do have, and the company's Apate AI, so APATE AI. It's an Australian startup, and they've developed this AI bot, and they've partnered with the Commonwealth Bank of Australia to basically try and combat scams. And they're doing it by intercepting calls. So they're actually playing with the scammers. They're actually taking the calls, they're having the conversation with the scammers, knowing full well that Apate AI is not about to hand over your bank details, not about to give this person any money, but they're wasting their time. And
That's
I love
fantastic.
that. I love that. And I've done
you,
it myself sometimes when you get a scammer call and you're maybe in the car, so you're not doing something that's useful or productive. So you have the conversation, oh, all right, tell me more about those solar panels that you want to sell me or whatever it might be they're trying to scam you with. And you go along and you have the long conversation and they think they've definitely got you, and you look, I'll just have a think about it and I'll get back to you at the end of it all. So you go, good, I wasted 10 minutes of time there. Fantastic. But Apate AI will do that. So already 10,000 scam calls a day they're intercepting. So these are calls where the telcos know that this is a scam number. So in the past, they would have just been blocked, but it's going a step further. So rather than just blocking them, now Apate AI is answering these calls. They're having discussions. They're able to generate 102 different personalities on the fly with human-like characteristics. So even if it gets to the point where the scammer, sometimes the call starts off automated and then they go, oh, we've got a live one here. So then a real human jumps in. So with all these different personalities, they wouldn't even pick up the fact that, hold on, I'm being scammed back in the other direction here because I had this same call 10 minutes ago, but no, it would be a different personality. It would be a different tone of voice. It would be different characteristics there. So hopefully the scammers wouldn't pick up on it. So I want to hear some of these recordings. I want to hear these scammers being dudded. I don't know if that said something about my personality, though. I'm taking some great delight.
I think the more publicity that gets, maybe people will think, well, perhaps there's something better I can do with my time than scam people.
You think the scammers are listening to our podcast, do you? Please listen in.
Well, no. I'm hoping that, if like it gets thrown onto YouTube, goes through social media, these are that AI scamming the scammers, and we can hear conversations, those real conversations. Yeah. That'd just be awesome.
Well, that is absolutely awesome. Now, there's a couple of goals I've got here. The primary goal, and it seems like a funny goal to have, but the primary goal is to waste time. The primary goal of this bot is to waste time of scammers, so that reduces their capacity to scam real victims.
Yeah, so it actually cuts down the number of calls that they can make.
Cuts down their resources. That's number one. And then the second part, the second objective or goal, is to learn and gather more information about the sort of conversations the scammers have. So if they've got that information, a bit like you say, forewarned, forearmed, so you can basically say, here's a typical scam call. Here's the things they'll say. Here's a real live scam call that you can listen to, so that if you have this type of conversation, run away, hang up, or waste their time, whatever, but do not give them the details. Do not take advantage of that offer that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity or whatever it might be. I love the ability for that to do it, and I just wonder, how far are they going to go? It's one bank at the moment they've partnered with. Are we going to see lots of telcos employ this technology? We're going to see lots of banks, for example. Where are they going with it? I'm not sure, but I love the idea that it's started down this path.
The human hand is an amazing machine. With 5 dexterous fingers, we have the power grip that can wield a sledgehammer, and with that same hand, a precision grip that can thread a needle and perform Japanese calligraphy. Until now, that was all lost for amputees. A prosthetic arm with an independent finger control, times by 5, well, it's been pretty much pie in the sky dreaming. Until now, Matt. Now that we have entered the future.
We have indeed. We talked last week about the fact that it's hard to draw a hand. Well, it's even harder to make a hand. That's right.
Yeah.
Many prosthetics that have got some control have a claw, a typical little claw at the end. Some have a bit of a hook with something that moves at the end.
Well, I've seen prosthetics with hand-looking hands, but they're not able to sense pressure so well. No. So they just open and close. And so they crush that egg.
That's right.
Without any sensitivity whatsoever.
And that's the test, isn't it? You're going to be able to pick up an egg or pick up a sledgehammer. Maybe that's two extremes there, but that's what we're aiming for. Because, once again, we're pretty clever. We can pick up an egg and not crush it. We can pick up a sledgehammer, and we know that we've got to grip it harder, use more pressure to pick up that sledgehammer rather than the egg. So we are clever. We do some pretty clever stuff. This particular prosthetic is the first prosthetic that offers individual finger control, and also, as a bit of a bonus there, it's got that sort of pressure sensor there as well. Now, the process with prosthetics is pretty clever, where many prosthetics, when they're attached to an arm, the muscle control that's left in that part of the arm is enough to be able to control something on the end. So if it's a claw-like structure, it can do something with that. You can learn to flex your arm, and that will basically move something on your hand. But this particular prosthetic can do that with all 5 fingers separately. A bit more training involved for you to be able to flex some of those muscles in your arm. But with this attached, you can get to the stage where you could actually use your fingers individually, and maybe not the same as a normal hand, but actually getting there in some way, shape or form. Wow. So quite impressive. They had one particular person who was an amputee for 12 years, and they did a bit of testing with this one, and they showed it, and I watched a video with this, and he was actually pretty good. He could pick up a spray bottle and spray out of a spray bottle. So actually squirt the top of a spray bottle. Now we think, big deal, anyone can do that.
Yeah, that's right.
But holding onto the bottle tight enough that you don't, again, squash the bottle and the liquid comes out everywhere, and then have just one finger squirt up and down. Yeah. So that was, for him, revolutionary. He said, wow, this is fantastic. I've had no arm for 12 years and I've never been able to do that in the past, but now look at that, I can do it. So we are getting there. Maybe this is the first step. We've talked before about brain-computer interfaces, about Neuralink, controlling things with our mind. Maybe we'll get to the stage where you'll have a prosthetic arm with individual finger control, and just by thinking about it, that'll be enough for you to be able to do things with it. So it's getting there.
Another step closer to Steve Austin, the $6 million man.
How much would he be worth now? $6 million back in the 70s, whatever it was.
Yeah, get you a new set of fingernails
that's probably
these days.
So now he'd be worth a bit more than $6 million.
And that is all we have for you today, folks. It's time to pack away our toys, brush our teeth and get ready for bed before Mum comes in and gets all cranky again. And we do want her to be in a good mood for story time, I guess, too. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
Look, my pleasure. And I'm in two minds now. I don't know whether I should keep training for my next half marathon or just go and pay $4,500 to have a pair of pants that does the work for me.
Well, back on the theme of Wallace and Gromit, I'm getting a hankering for some Wensleydale cheese for some strange reason. Perhaps a trip to the moon is in order as well, which reminds me, I really must finish building that lunar rocket in the basement. Thanks for tuning in again, folks. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson comes to you every week with a fresh coat of French polish, exquisitely buffed to give you the glossiest finish that you'll ever find on a single podcast. It's a source of pride and a sign of quality, folks. I'm your host, James Eddy, and it has been a splendiferous pleasure to bring you this episode of Tech Talk, and we hope that you'll be back again in another week's time to get your glimpse of the future. Remember, we have the best glimpses. Nobody else does better glimpses than us. See you next week, and don't forget to bring your friends.